afternoon. Today on the PIO podcast, we have Austin McDaniel. He is the communications director for the Alaska Department of Public Safety. Austin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Robert. Long-time listener, first-time caller today.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate the kudos to the show. I do. I really do appreciate it. So, Austin, let's hear about your background. How did you become the communications director for DPS?
Yeah, thanks. So, I started back in 2008 working at a small market TV station here in Alaska. Did that for 2 years, and then took a pretty unique opportunity to go work for our governor at the time in his communication shop. Worked there for him for 4.5 years until he left office. Then I kind of spent 4 years jumping around to different places, trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to do with my life. Spent some time working in a jail as a corrections officer, spent a little bit of time doing marketing and PR for a telecom up here in Alaska, and then eventually ended up working for a newly elected governor in 2018. Spent a year working for him, and then the opportunity presented itself to come over to the Department of Public Safety. It's got that mission that I really respect and have always liked working with their folks over the years. And when that opportunity came available in 2020, just after kind of that first wave of pandemic mania, I decided to take the jump over to over here at DPS.
Okay, so you've had a pretty broad spectrum of background. I mean, between being a journalist and then moving back and forth into the political end of it, and even a corrections officer. That's an interesting mix of job experience.
Yeah, it certainly is, but it really set me up to kind of have that perfect little mix of what you need working in a place like Department of Public Safety, especially in a state like Alaska. We're a multi-thronged law enforcement agency, so we have, the everyone knows the famous Alaska State Troopers from our TV show for several years. Then we have our statewide game wardens, the Alaska Wildlife Troopers, and then all of the other things that come with a statewide law enforcement agency, like our criminal history repository, our state crime lab, state fire marshal's office. So we kind of have everything consolidated here within Department of Public Safety, and work to tell everyone's story here. In a state like Alaska, there's never really a dull moment.
Okay, so you kind of gave us an overview of what the Department of Public Safety is made up with. How many sworn and civilian employees do you have?
So we have right around between the Alaska State Troopers, Alaska Wildlife Troopers, and our commissioned state fire marshals, right around 400 commissioned law enforcement officers, and then around 600 total non-sworn staff between the crime lab, professional support staff for law enforcement, dispatch, kind of running the gamut there. And then on our in our PIO office, I oversee a couple different wings. We have the more typical public information, public affairs side, which has 4 people working there. I've got a PIO supervisor, as well as 2 journey level public information officers. And then we're actually lucky enough to have a visual information specialist that does a lot of our graphics, video work for us. And then I also oversee all of our public records requests for the department as well, and have a whole team that works on that. And then we're getting ready to bring on body-worn cameras here to the state troopers this year. We got the kind of trial period going on right now with a broad deployment plan for this fall. So the other side of my operations here will be kind of expecting a big increase and growth with kind of all the additional body-worn camera public records pieces that'll be coming into play later this year for us.
Oh yeah, and you'll get if you don't already have the First Amendment people coming at you, you're going to get that as those start to roll out. You're going to get that even more and more.
Yeah, we're definitely.
Austin,
Go ahead,
go
Robert.
ahead. No, go ahead.
So yeah, we're definitely.
I was just gonna.
We're definitely gearing up for an increase in public records requests, as well as kind of seeing how Alaska, which is a pretty unique state, twice as big as the state of Texas, huge chunks of our state you can't get to without a plane. We're interested to see not only how our some of our more urban residents We have big cities the size of 400,000 people, as well as communities the size of 600 that are off the road system that don't have full-time law enforcement presence. So it'll be interesting to see how kind of our residents take to this. We're going to be the largest law enforcement agency in Alaska that's going to be employing body-worn cameras this year.
Okay. All right. So with that and the other things that you guys do in your office, what kind of social media platforms do you run, and who's actually handling them?
So we all kind of take turns managing our social media. We have for the department, we use kind of our main brand, which is the Alaska State Troopers. That's our uniform law enforcement presence. So we use that as a kind of brand handle for all of our social media. In Alaska, just like I think in the rest of America, Facebook is king. So we use Facebook primarily, but we're also on Nextdoor, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter. We just created a Threads account, kind of seeing how that goes. But that we're on all of the big primary channels. We never jumped on the TikTok bandwagon before kind of all the governors of America decided to shut it down. So we're not on that, but we do create similar style content through Instagram, and we're going to start experimenting that on the Threads platform as well.
Nice. All right. So let's discuss, since we're talking about putting content out and stuff, let's talk about recycling content from old and new when you're communicating to the public.
Yeah, so I think we do a pretty good job of this. We'll go through and create, I'll just focus on recruitment efforts because that seems to be, a pretty big topic across the country. We'll go through and take photos. So the way we have our recruitment primary graphic set up is we lean heavily in on the compensation, our hiring bonuses, and some of the benefits of being an Alaska State Trooper. We have one of the highest starting salaries of any law enforcement anywhere in the country. So we really lean in on that, and that really helps push that message out, not only here in Alaska but across the country. We have lateral officers that'll come here that are at the sergeant or lieutenant level, come to Alaska, and they'll be making 2 or 3 times what they were making in their city police departments, county sheriff's office, whatever it might be, from where they're coming from. So we rely on that, but we go through and we'll recycle the kind of cover photo that we have with this, right? We're constantly collecting photos and video from our troopers in the field, as well as sending out my staff to collect new photos and new video. So we'll go through and recycle that top image, which makes it look like it's something new, but in reality, it's just making a real slight change, changing up maybe the content that goes with the post, the caption, what have you. And that's been really successful for us with not having to reinvent the wheel every time we have to do a recruitment post, and making sure that we're getting that message out. It looks slightly different. We hit heavy on recruitment here, for an agency that has 400 sworn law enforcement officers. We're down 60 right now, so that's a huge deficit for us that we're working on recovering from. So we're always talking about recruitment, especially on social media, to keep the Alaska State Troopers top of mind for not only people in Alaska but people across the country.
And being down more than 10% of your staffing, that's a tough number to be down.
It certainly is. And we have a pretty unique mission up here. We have patrol areas that are the size of the state of California in our state, where you have one trooper in a small plane that's, patrolling small communities that you can only get to by plane in the summer, and maybe by a snowmobile snow machine in the winter. So, for those that have seen the show, that, there's the Alaska State Troopers are generally out there doing the job, and in a manner that would take 3 or 4 or 5, local police officers, or maybe for a more urban county and down in the lower 48, a larger response, it might be 1 or 2 troopers, keeping the peace, and backup is hours away and a small plane ride.
So let me ask you this: the demographic makeup politically, I guess, in Alaska, is it Does it lean more conservative, more liberal? Is it across the board even?
I'll tell you, we have, we're going through maybe some political changes right now. We have 3 people in our congressional delegation. They're all statewide seats. We have one that's definitely a more conservative Republican. Then we have a more moderate Republican. Then we have a more moderate Democrat that was just elected last, last year. Yeah. So, it depends on where you're at in the state. Alaska was, in 2020, when we saw the different demonstrations or riots or what have you down across the lower 48, we didn't really have any of that up here. Alaska still very much values law enforcement. They really respect and value the Alaska State Troopers. We're showing up in a community that might have something pretty drastic happening that has, again, no professional full-time law enforcement presence. When they call, we show up, we help. We're big on the community-oriented policing up here. It's kind of always been how we've had to do business. When you're one trooper, you're going into a community probably to arrest somebody that's potentially well respected in that community, and you got to make sure you have the community's trust and support, as well as making sure you're not burning bridges, because the person that our troopers arrest today may be the person that they need help from tomorrow. So that's been ingrained within our mission, since we were created. I think the other unique thing about our state that a lot of people don't know is, Alaska doesn't have the county system, right? We have larger cities that will have a city police department, and then it goes straight to state police. So there's
Oh,
no county, or we call them boroughs in Alaska, but there's no real borough police effort. You either have a city police department that you fund through taxes, or you're in an unorganized area, and it's the Alaska State Troopers that are responding to calls for service, and that's everything from somewhere in a more urban area um, where we do a lot of our training of our new troopers, to, again, out in Western Alaska, where you're flying in small planes every single day to go and arrest people for whatever uh, crimes they may have committed the night before or are actively committing.
okay. That when my next question was going to be about the riots and how it affected you. You answered my question. That's great that you guys weren't as heavily affected as the rest of the lower 48 were. There are still towns that are still struggling, and recruitment is a struggle for everybody right now. We know that. And I originally came from the Chicagoland area, and when you have a police department that's projected to lose 1,000 people in the next year, and they're down well over 1,000 already, that's scary for public safety. You're talking a little over like 15 or 20% of your staffing, and then you don't even count out who's injured, who's on light duty, medical, all that other stuff. So yeah, it becomes really problematic. All right, Austin. So getting people to buy in, how do you get your sworn and your professional staff to weigh in on content ideas with limited resources? Because we all know PIOs don't have much budget.
Certainly. We have started recently, when someone sends us a photo or sends us some video and then we share it online, we actually started following back up with that trooper or that professional support staff member with some of the analytics or metrics that came from that post, to reiterate to them how important that was. And right now what we're doing is, at the same time, is emphasizing to our troopers specifically the importance that we're all recruiters for our agency. And in reality, our troopers in the field are our best recruiters for our agency. While we do have a small recruitment staff as well, the people that last the longest as Alaska State Troopers and end up being the best troopers are the ones that were recruited by a trooper that's out in the field, from a community contact, or from somebody that they may know, friend or neighbor. Those are the people that end up being our best troopers, are the ones that we've been able to recruit directly. So I think that by going back and showing, when someone sends you a photo, the thousands of people that saw it, and featuring it, and we have an internal newsletter as well that we feature that information in, that I think that's been the secret here to lately to getting people to send in regular information. Alaska is a big state. Primarily, my entire staff is based in Anchorage, which is our largest city. However, we're covered by the city police department, so there actually are no state troopers patrolling in our area. That's where our headquarters office is. It's an hour drive north to get to the first kind of patrol areas for the troopers. That's where I'm at today. Is up north at our kind of Matsu Valley field office doing this interview. And so we're not out there to grab those photos. And, the Alaska State Troopers, Alaska Wildlife Troopers, they get to see some pretty cool things that, no other law enforcement officer in the country gets to see and gets to be a part of. So we kind of remind them that, hey, I know you're taking pictures to send to the wife or to send to your kids. So maybe send one to us as well. And you don't worry, we aren't going to misuse it. We don't certainly use everything that we get, but those have been a couple of the things that have helped us really get our troopers to send content in. And we kind of apply that same concept as well to our support staff.
So that's really about your internal comms and going back to your people saying, hey, look at what you did. This is, this post went viral, or it got a lot of hits. It reached a lot of people. And just that internal communication back and forth with them and saying, thank you, you did a great job. This is what it did. That usually inspires a lot of people. I think one of the things I remember several years ago, I was talking to an agency, and they were saying that the officers were saying that we never hear about good things that happen in the department. And that's unfortunate, because you do need to hear that. You do need to have the back and forth, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I look at it as Alaska is a very small state, right? I was born and raised here. There's the 7 degrees of separation in Alaska. It's 1 or 2. Everybody knows an Alaska State Trooper is somebody that works here. So we definitely emphasize, especially our key messages. We hit up our troopers constantly to remind them of that. Anytime I'm out at a trooper post, I'm reminding them of, hey, if you were to overlay Alaska on top of, the contiguous U.S., we'd be reaching from Minnesota to California to Florida, right? Not many people in Florida know what's happening in Minnesota, and nobody in Minnesota knows what's happening in California. So we have to go through and remind people, especially in a place like Alaska, of what our coworkers are doing and the cool stuff that they're doing. We make it a matter of policy to, when we're going to make any kind of press statement, we're telling our people before we tell the press, even if it's just a few minutes, to give them the ability to have that information just before the public gets it. Because the first thing that all of their friends and neighbors are going to do is call or text their Alaska State Trooper friend or relative and ask them what's actually going on with this. So we've already armed them with that key information. And we try to, especially when the politicians are down deciding our budget at the Capitol building, we do a really good job of trying to regularly send good news that our agency's doing. So that way, when people are asking them, hey, what did you do at work this week? They already have a short pre-approved thing that they can say that's not about an open case or is sensitive information that they don't want to share, and we get them out of saying just another normal week at the office to sharing something really great that our agency's doing, maybe not in their area but somewhere in our state.
I agree. That's great to hear that. All right, so here I got to tell you a funny story. So my son is in the Coast Guard. He's based out of Everett, Washington. So his boat decided that their XO was leaving, and they decided that they were going to go on a trip. So they went up the coast to Alaska, and they did. You talk about seeing things. And my son's boat and crew saw some amazing things. They went up all the way to Juneau, Alaska, and they were able to go to Glacier Bay, and they were at Glacier Bay, and they had a special ceremony up there. They saw grizzlies, of course, whales everywhere. And my son was kayaking, and they decided to stop off on shore and go exploring a little bit. And they have a safety officer out there, and he's watching everybody. And he radios them and he says, guys, you better get back in your kayaks and head out. And they're like, why? Well, there's two grizzlies right around the bend from where you're at. I mean, literally. And the one guy that's with my son says, no, don't want it. And my son says, we're going back. So they got in the kayaks, and as they're making the curve around, all of a sudden there's the grizzlies at. They would have literally walked right into them.
Yeah, no, Alaska's definitely got some very big animals, and that's one of the things I do like about being up here versus maybe somewhere down south is, you know, the animals that can harm you in Alaska, you can see coming from a while, ways away because they're all over 1,000 pounds, right? I don't got any poisonous spiders or bugs or snakes or anything like that up here. It's all the big animals, and a lot of times you take it for granted as being a guy that's lived up here, my entire life, working for a couple governors in the state police, right? I've been pretty much everywhere there is to be and seen some really cool stuff, and you almost take it for granted until you bring friends or relatives up from down south to come visit, and you kind of do a couple of those tourist things that I'm sure is someone that lived in Chicago, right? There's the tourist things that you never really do, and
Right.
kind of reacquaints you with some of the really cool stuff about your state that you take for granted, that the mountains that I open my window to every morning, not a lot of places have that, especially living in a city of 400,000 people. They don't have that.
Right. Right. Yep. All right. So let's talk about creating taking a boring topic, and we have a lot of them in law enforcement, and changing it to something interesting.
That's definitely not an easy task for I think any of us out there, is taking those non-standard public safety messages, and whether it's drinking and driving or wearing a seatbelt or you know locking and hiding away your valuables inside of your vehicles, that can be challenging to say the same thing again and again and again, try to get people to listen, right? When you've got that homicide going on, everybody wants every piece of information you can offer, but when you have that proactive public safety message, it can get challenging to get people to pay attention. I know up here we found a lot of success in the vertical talking head style videos, whether it's traffic safety tips or here recently, because we have the wildlife troopers that do fish and game enforcement across the state, we have a couple of very popular fisheries as well as hunts that Alaska residents really take part in. So we'll go through and record short 60-second maximum videos that hit the rules or the common violations we see and really push those out to Alaskans through social media. Found a lot of success in that. Um, I think the other cool thing that we did up here that's I think unique to Alaska, Alaska was declared by the federal government to be a high intensity drug trafficking area. I'm sure everyone's heard the HIDA acronym before. So Alaska, the whole state's declared one. We're the most recently declared area to be a HIDA designated area. And this last year, the HIDA Executive Board, which for those that don't know is made up of pretty much anyone that contributes a full-time law enforcement officer or prosecutor to that organization, gets to have a vote on the executive board. And they came to me, as well as my counterpart at the FBI field office up here, Chloe Martin. They said, hey, instead of just using this money to, pay for overtime, to have drug investigators out there doing their thing, we want to go through and invest in doing some really cool advertising and marketing that's different than what you normally see when it comes to the drug advertising and PSAs you see out of the public health departments. So we went through and focused in and gathered up PIOs from our local police departments that had professional PIOs, as well as from the federal agencies that wanted to participate, and put together a really cool month-long paid advertising campaign to go through and make sure that people knew, our key message was fentanyl is killing people. Here's how you can help, right? Law enforcement can't be everywhere at once. Created a spiffy website with an anonymous tips tool that went right into our HIDA kind of intelligence center. So they were going through and triaging that. And we ended up spending, $40,000 of federal money that the HIDA board approved, so it didn't come from any of our individual budgets, and that ended up actually making a pretty significant impact on our fentanyl trafficking that was occurring here. We saw drug seizures go up. We saw anonymous tips go up. And that was, I think, a pretty fun thing for a lot of us up here because we don't generally get to, do paid advertising, especially not at that volume. And then to see, drug seizures go up, 200% over that month-long period, see anonymous tips go up 300%, to see your work have some kind of an impact is great. We're still waiting to see what the overdose statistics will be like for, we ran that campaign in January of this year, to see kind of what that key performance indicator looks like. But that was, I think, a really interesting, fun campaign that we were all able to work on. Instead of kicking it over to an ad agency, as most people would do, we relied upon, the website and digital skills of our partners at the Anchorage Police Department, the writing skills of the ATF, the DEA, the FBI, and then a lot of the advertising skills from my shop to go through, and design skills to go through and put together a really slick campaign that, at least in the eyes of all the chiefs that got to see all the numbers behind the scenes after we completed everything, they were really thrilled with it. I think once we have that overdose data, once it comes out later this year, that'll hopefully show kind of a new way that law enforcement can go through it to, not just hit the same standard PSA lines of, carry your Narcan and, all drugs are bad, but to go through and to turn our communication knowledge into something that was effectively turned into a law enforcement outcome is pretty unique, especially since all of us that were involved were all, non-sworn professionals.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. That's outstanding, and that's one thing I think that we don't do well enough overall. We don't really kind of plan advertising for a police department. We rely on, the DEA's One Pill Can Kill campaign and any of the other health related departments that put things out. Sometimes coroner's offices will do something, but the fentanyl, the degree to which fentanyl has reached everybody in the community, and the overdoses of young people and even older adults. I mean, I know I was looking at some statistics the other day, and like a good chunk of the overdoses that we see are males in their 40s that are overdosing. These are not teenagers, but these are older adults that they've got a pain addiction, or they're looking for another cheap way to get high, and fentanyl is the way to do it.
I mean, in 2022 alone, right? Just the size and the scope of this problem of fentanyls being manufactured somewhere in Asia, sent down to the cartels in Mexico and South America, getting up into America, and then getting all the way into the southern U.S. all the way up to Alaska, right?
Right.
Last year, 2022, 750,000 people live in Alaska. We seized over 10 million potentially fatal doses of fentanyl products within our state, right? That's an enormous amount of drugs, and that's just scratching the surface.
Right, right. That's amazing. The Coast Guard the U.S. Coast Guard just seized like $186 million of fentanyl, heroin, cocaine coming up through San Diego. Really a big 3-ship operation that they ended up seizing, and I'm sure that was headed your way, and of course all the Eastern Seaboard, and then everywhere in between there. It's amazing the amount of money that is being made and the amount of destruction it's doing to our communities across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of the problem of our era for law enforcement right now, as well as our partners at public health, of taking the three tools that we have to make an impact, whether that's the prevention, the treatment, or for our side, the enforcement operations of all of us working double time trying to, prevent this poison from getting out on the streets. Especially now that you're seeing it, cut with xylazine and other things that are just making it even more fatal than it already was. This is kind of a call on all of us, especially as communicators, to try to think of new, creative, proactive ways to, educate the public on the dangers of this, especially for our law enforcement folks.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me jump back to our questions here because we're kind of going off on a drug tangent here, and I don't want to go that deep. Um, New social media platforms that have popped up. You guys said you jumped on Threads, and I know some agencies are starting to do that. What are you looking at in the event that like Twitter goes? Because everybody seems to use Twitter as this is the emergency alert way of getting things out, and some people use Everbridge or Nixle or some other platform to do that. But a lot of agencies that are smaller can't afford Everbridge or the full version of Nixle, and if Twitter goes bye or it loses everybody's attention, what do you see us going to if it's not there?
I think that you're going to see a lot more agencies rely on their own websites to be pushing information out. Um, you know, we have never been big Twitter users. We didn't join Twitter till 2020, and we never really got on step before it started kind of sliding downhill here over the last year or so. And that's kind of because a lot of Alaskans don't use Twitter. Alaska, which I've only lived here, so I can't say how it is anywhere else, but Alaska's always been on Facebook, and most of our communication's happening in these Facebook groups. That's where I'm seeing the majority of stuff, majority of conversations happening. Nextdoor hasn't caught on super well outside of our urban areas. So for an agency like us trying to find the right social channel that will work for an urban area that has modern day technology like 5G and fiber to your home, and then have areas of our state that have no cell phone service where people live, and there's no internet until the satellite stuff becomes a little bit more reliable, of trying to find ways to do effective communication. I mean, since I've been in this job, I've had to fax things to communities to get information out about an incident. And then I've got stuff happening in our urban areas that's unfolding in real time on social media. Um, so I think it's always a balance to go back and pause, and we always have to do this up here of really thinking of, okay, this community, how do they consume information, and how can we get our important messaging out to them? Um, for us, Twitter wasn't big. We're observing the Threads thing. I think we've posted one thing on Threads about I'm sure everyone's seen from their state police, the cruiser contest that kicked off this week. So we've started kind of venturing down that road, but the Threads folks are saying they don't want to see the controversial news-related stuff on their social channels. So then what do we look for? We have also at DPS, which is unique, we don't email out our press releases. We have a section of our website that we've had for years and years and years that anybody from a reporter to a member of the public can go on and look and see pretty much all of it's like a police blotter, but we make our troopers as well as my staff go through and actually write more than what you would find in a police blotter on significant incidents that they responded to. Pretty much every arrest ends up in there. Significant road closures, vehicle collisions. That's where folks can go to find that information. We've been able to train Alaskans to go there and find information. The other thing that we've found a lot of success with up here, because Nixle and Everbridge and Granicus and everything became just so cost prohibitive, we found a new kind of startup that caters to law enforcement and education. It's called Tip 411. If you haven't heard of it, I definitely can tell you to look at it. They got slick app. They have really great email, texting communication. It's all like a flat fee. You get into a multi-year contract, and it's I don't know what their current contract rates are, but it's much more affordable than what we were paying for Nixle when we had it up here as a statewide entity. So that would be a really great alert tool for folks to look at. But then again, that's only as effective as the people that sign up for it. And just like some of our people in our state can't get on Facebook, we have to find ways to be able to communicate to them. I
Right,
think it's
right.
always important to take a pause and think of, we're not just doing it to talk to all the social media managers that are all on threads talking at each other right now. Um, we're here to talk to Alaskans about what we've got going on and what they need to know. So for us, that's Facebook right now. And then, looking at other tools as they pop up.
Outstanding. Yeah, it's an interesting thing that you have, that you have a state that has areas that's not serviced by standard electricity, standard wireless, standard. You look at like most urban areas, wireless is like a given. You're going to have some kind of Wi-Fi somewhere. You're going to have some kind of cellular, and sometimes you have boosters in buildings so they can get the signal through the building. I mean, yeah, that's crazy that you guys don't have. That it's still the untouched environment in a sense because it's so rural.
I mean, I know I've kind of harked on this a little bit here, but I mean, there's troopers that we have that I have to take 3 plane rides to get to, right? I've gone 3 separate planes from Anchorage, which is our hub international airport. We got 737, 747s landing here, the third busiest cargo airport in the world here in Anchorage, Alaska. But I've got places that can't you just can't get to easily. And with the infrastructure bill that came out last year, they're putting a lot more fiber in to get it places. But it's almost like having to wire the equivalent of a third of the entire United States with fiber because of just these vast distances, and it's certainly not cheap to put fiber in anywhere, and especially areas that don't have high population density.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we'll finish this up and we're going to talk about recruitment and retention. How is your agency doing at recruitment and retention? And I know you said that the pay is really good, so that is kind of like one of your recruiting tools. But how are you dealing with your retention of the people that are there?
So with retention, we really focus in on our wellness initiatives that we have. And I think we try to do a really good job of recruiting people that we think are going to like Alaska, especially if they're coming from not being in Alaska. I love this state. I hunt, I fish, I do the outdoor things that make this state the best place to live on the entire planet, right? And we're out looking for people that are like that in the lower 48. So we're looking for people that are avid outdoorsmen that want to live at a place where, you could be out fishing for sockeye salmon and drive back to your house and cook it for dinner that night. Um, and then you can go hunting in the fall and you can go fishing. I mean, there's just so much outdoor stuff. So that's one of the things we do to focus in on people that like that lifestyle. So that way they don't want to leave. Once they get hooked on the Alaska bug, they don't really want to go live anywhere else because
Right,
we
right,
offer the best hunting and the best fishing anywhere else in the country. Um, and then we top that off with really really great pay. It's not an easy job. Law enforcement's not an easy job anywhere, but we compensate our troopers exceptionally well. We're doing the whole hiring bonus thing. $15,000 for
wow,
a new recruit, $30,000 for a lateral officer. There's some places in Alaska that have even higher bonuses right now.
wow,
So I think we're doing all that, and we do a lot of recruitment advertising as well. And I'll say, right, we had our own essentially recruitment TV show down in that aired across the entire world on National Geographic called the Alaska State Troopers, and we were getting thousands and thousands of applications, but our academy sizes never never increased. Right, it was still 15 to 20 troopers we were putting through every time, even though we were getting thousands of applications because we were just casting this huge, massive, wide net across the entire world. By bringing the camera crews into our operations, letting them see how we do business, it was an attractive job, but it didn't attract the right people. They
right,
couldn't pass the background. They couldn't pass a polygraph or a psych test or a personal fitness test. So, they didn't make the cut to become an Alaska State Trooper. I think that's the same thing that kind of helps us today as we, like every law enforcement agency, faces some recruitment headwinds of finding the people that are going to make good troopers and recruiting them to be troopers, having our troopers recruit them to be troopers. We've gone into some areas where maybe are not as law enforcement friendly to their cops, and we'll host events down there and try to convince lateral officers in cities or counties that just aren't very pro law enforcement into coming to a state that is very pro law enforcement. And that's been successful for us as well. We also have a pretty robust online advertising program and campaign that we run across the country, really looking for those people that at least that we think are going to be good troopers. We're 60 sworn positions down, so that's not a great place to be in, but we're going to keep trying to find that silver bullet that everyone else across the country is also trying to find, to make to keep our agency as responsive as we need it to be to serve our people.
Right. All right, so let's lighten this up then. A little rapid fire questions. You ready?
Yep, let's do it.
Texting or talking?
Definitely texting.
Coffee or tea?
Iced tea.
Adult drink of choice?
I'm doing gin and tonic right now.
Right now?
Right now, not right now. Right now.
There you go.
Maybe tonight when I get off of work.
There you go. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
I would say flight, because Alaska's a big giant state and you got to get around somehow.
I would go with teleportation. Be easier.
There you go. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Do you have a pet?
I do. Golden retriever named Deshka.
Hunting dog yet?
Not hunting dog. She likes outdoors, but she was adverse to water, so she's doesn't want to swim, which is weird for a golden retriever.
Right.
Makes it nice to take her places near a lake because she won't get wet and can get back in the car. But yeah, didn't turn out to be the hunting dog we all hoped she would be, but she's still a great dog.
Awesome. Is there a book or author that had an influence on you?
Earlier this year, I read Smart Brevity by Mike Allen and Tim Vanderhall, and that has been, I think, a really great read. I've been a big fan of Mike Allen since he was at Politico and his newsletters, and to see what they've done with Axios and this smart brevity style of writing and communication, we've applied some of that to our internal communications because, as a cop, I don't know how it is everywhere else, but up here you get so many freaking emails that between prosecutors and random people sending you crime tips and your bosses, that we've trying to take that bullet point style from smart brevity and apply it to our internal comms. So that's been my book of the moment.
Awesome. Ask permission or beg for forgiveness?
Beg for forgiveness, and 99% of the time.
Yeah, it's a PIO way. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose?
I think it'd have to be Abraham Lincoln.
Interesting. Nice. All right, Austin, key final thoughts. What key points would you like our listeners to take from today?
I think we kind of jumped all over the place, but since there's a lot of law enforcement sworn that are out there, if you're interested in a career in Alaska, $90,000 starting pay. If you're a lateral, we could get you up over $100,000, $30,000 hiring bonus.
Wait, hold on a minute. $90,000?
That's our right around our starting salary right now for a new recruit. And then it's well over 100,000 for any kind of a lateral officer that's got, around 5 years or more experience.
Plus a $15,000 or $30,000 bonus.
Yep, take home car. We've got those new Tahoes.
Yeah, nice. What's the cost of living like up there?
It depends on where you're at. I mean, I don't find Anchorage, where I live, to be any more expensive than, any other kind of Pacific Northwest area city. And we're not as expensive to live in as Hawaii. But I will say we also have areas of our state where we have troopers working that are exponentially higher cost of living. But the state does offer different cost of living adjustments to pay. We also have 2 on, 2 off trooper posts in some of our very, very small communities. So you still have to live in Alaska. You can't be living in the lower 48. You have to live here in Anchorage, Fairbanks, or kind of our more urban areas. But you'd spend 2 weeks on working in those communities and then fly out. We'd fly you in and fly you out of the community. So those have much higher cost of living, but we definitely compensate for that above that standard. Getting out of the academy, even in the academy, getting paid that 90,000, then the bonuses. That's not including all the other the other pay things. So maybe Robert, you want to come up and join us, former cop. I don't know if your license is still active, but
I'm
uh,
56 years old. I think I'm a little old for that now,
Uh, we just had
unfortunately.
we just had a officer. I know we're getting short on time here, but we just had a homicide detective from New Orleans that had been like the storied New Orleans homicide detective. A more seasoned officer came up here and decided that he wanted to retire to Alaska and decided to give us 5 years of great service. So he's kind of a couple years into that now, but uh, it's great to have people from whether it's a lieutenant at Las Vegas PD or kind of the guy that's already done 30 years at New Orleans and decides, you know what, I want to come live in Alaska and work patrol. So it could be for
Wow,
anyone.
there you go. Anything you'd like to add, Austin?
No, I think we covered it all. I know I mentioned it earlier, but none of us can do this job alone, especially if you're a one-man band or even a two-man band. So get to know your partner agency PIOs, and there can be a great resource for you when things get dicey and dynamic, and you've got to turn on 24/7 operations. Get to know those folks now, so that way when you need them, they're there.
Absolutely. Austin, how can people best reach out to you if they want to connect or follow up or maybe get a job?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can also email me. It's my first name, period, last name at alaska.gov. So that's Austin, period, McDaniel at alaska.gov. And yeah, we'd definitely be interested in talking to you about a job in the state troopers. Anyone that's listening out there, maybe even turn you into a PIO. I've got one of those positions coming open here probably the next 4 months. So you do that.
And I will add all that into the show notes so people will be able to connect with you. Austin McDaniel, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been a pleasure having you.
Hey, thanks so much, Robert.
All right.